Welcome back. As a new administration and Congress take over in the Capitol, with new priorities and agendas, the field of play evolves for the defense industry. For a look ahead at what's on the horizon for the defense world, Defense News journalists lay out what they see as the biggest coming stories.
Welcome to this week's Reporters Roundtable. I'm Aaron Mehta. With the Biden administration officially in office, we decided to have three of our Defense News colleagues, Jen Judson, David Larter, and Valerie Encina, join us to discuss how the Biden administration might differ from the Trump administration and how it deals with the three military services. We're going to start with Jen. Jen, you cover the Army very closely. What are you looking for out of the Biden administration going forward?
Well, I think one of the things to watch out for with the Biden administration is I think we're already looking at a lower top line budget for the Army. The other services have a lot of priorities as well. So I think that there is a concern that the Army budget will go down. If it were to stay flat, the Army would still lose about $13 billion in buying power from FY19 to FY22. So the Army is obviously going to have to maybe look at their modernization priorities and cut from those priorities or scale back some of their current plans. So we could definitely see some major changes in terms of what those modernization priorities may be if the budget is slashed. I think the other thing to look out for is in the past administration, a 4-star command was set up to handle modernization priorities called Army Futures Command. I think it'll be interesting to see what Biden wants to do with that. Could it become a 3-star or a 2-star command? Could it be downscaled? Could it be moved from Austin, Texas? That's been a little bit controversial, putting the headquarters there. So I think it'll be interesting to see what they do there, particularly in terms of giving power to the acquisition community and the modernization community and who's going to be responsible for what, because that's been a little bit difficult to organize.
All right. David, same question for the Navy, which is a service that's kind of going through a bit of a transition right now, right?
Yes, I think what's going to happen in the first year of the Biden administration will be the Navy's going to have to look at priorities in terms of where do they want to spend their money. The capacity of the fleet to handle its current workload is, I think, by all measures insufficient. The carriers are right now going out for, these two deployments in one deployment cycle. We call them double pump deployments. So in one 36-month readiness cycle, the aircraft carriers are going out twice. Which is an unsustainable pace of operations, which speaks to a certain lack of capacity, just not enough peanut butter to scrape across the bread, just not enough ships to do the workload that they have. During the last year, Mark Esper and the Pentagon and the Navy and OSD CAPE, which is his in-house think tank, took a look at some ways to try and creatively solve this problem. It didn't quite make it all the way up to the White House. The White House had their own ideas, and I think everyone kind of got to the end of the line of a whole year of looking at how are we going to fix the Navy's capacity, and we kind of ended up where we started. The ideas that OSD CAPE were putting forward had a lot to do with unmanned surface vessels, unmanned underwater vessels as a means of boosting the Navy's capacity. But it remains to be seen if that's the way the Navy's going to go forward. So I think the Biden administration in the first year is going to have to wrestle with all the same questions that we wrestled with all last year. How are you going to fix this capacity problem?
So a little bit of the more things change, the more things stay the same. All right. Val, I wanted to go to you last, partly because maybe the biggest legacy of the Trump administration on the military is going to be the creation of the Space Force, the new branch of the military. That falls under your beat as the Air Force reporter. How do you think the Biden team is going to tackle that? And then what else might they be looking at?
Well, I think there's been a lot of speculation about whether the Biden administration seeks to disestablish the Space Force. Every expert that I've talked to says that that's not going to happen, that it's far more likely that the Biden administration just continues on with the work that the Space Force has already been doing. I think one thing that could come into question, though, is the location of U.S. Space Command. Right before Trump left office, it was decided that that would be placed, that new headquarters would be placed in Alabama. And that was a very controversial decision for a lot of reasons, and one that the Biden administration could seek to open up. Another thing that I think might be big over the next year is a discussion about fighter mix. President Trump involved himself very, very directly in questioning, how many F-35 should we buy? Should we buy more Super Hornets? Should there be fly-offs between this plane and that plane? And I don't think we'll see that so out in the open in the Biden administration, but I do think that the Air Force will continue to have those discussions of what's the proper mix between F-15s, F-35s, and maybe even F-16s.
Sounds right. Well, thank you all for joining me. Of course, as these stories develop or don't develop, we'll be tracking it all on defensenews.com. Again, thanks everyone for joining me. I'm Aaron Mehta.
That's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.